We have opened the 3D experience. Now we're ready to find our assembly. Our product that we're going to try to work with today is this one here called with the name as shown here. Now normally the first thing you would do is come up to your collaborative space and make sure you're in your right collaborative space so that you can save your models with your own initials on them. But in this case we're not going to be doing that. Today we're just going to be exploring the Explorer mode. So I have given all the students in my course access to my collaborative space where this model is. You'll simply open it up and then close it without saving. Okay. Now if you're not in my class as one of my students, I do have this assembly on the website, and at this point in the course you probably don't know how to import it yourself, but certainly you could have one of your administrators show you how to import this into your own collaborative space. Okay. Now I could type in this exact name and it would pull up just one PLM search result, but I'm going to do a little bit of a subset of the name. I'm going to type in this first portion of it, which should give me a whole lot of parts that have that in the name, and that way will be a little more entertaining of a search for us. Okay, so let's type in 010 dash and we get a whole list of results here. Okay, and depending on which view we're in, whether we're in grid view or tile view or data grid view, we see the parts displayed differently. Now as we scroll down you'll see that the individual parts, you can actually see a preview or a thumbnail of them, but the assemblies our sub-assemblies don't have a preview. They have this little block shape, so we really can't tell by looking at this what it is, and sometimes we have so many we just don't know, and that's where this preview icon can really come in handy. Now I have a whole lot of parts here with the 010 dash in them. I've actually got several collaborative spaces myself. I'm going to narrow this down to just the parts in the 3D experience 3DE collaborative space that I've made for this course. So here's all the parts to that assembly. They all have 010 at the beginning of their name. Now I'm going to select this little preview, and then the preview loads. Now for parts, I don't know what the big advantage is here because you already have a thumbnail. Now this is a fully panable, zoomable, rotatable viewer, but for just getting a quick look at the part, the thumbnail is just fine for me. But if you come along over here and you pick an assembly, this is where it can really be an advantage. It gives you a quick view of an assembly before you waste the time trying to open it into CATIA or open it into Explorer mode. Okay, so this is kind of nice for products. So let's close this now, and now let's go back to data grid view. Okay, now we have a whole list of the things that have that search string in them, and here's the one that I actually want to work with today. This is that assembly, and I'm going to right click, and there are options to explore or open. Now there are actions here that you can also do if you don't like right clicking. Okay, so I'll right click and I'll say explore, and it's going to think for a little bit, and there we go. It's opened into Explorer mode, and notice at the top my default app is the Innovia Product Finder app. And if you expand, let's see here, there's our pump at the top. Sometimes it gets hidden. Maybe this needs to come out, or sometimes this little chevron here hides and unhides the tree. Now notice the tree, we could expand it and see more of the parts. And if we expand it, it thinks for a bit, and then each of the parts gets put out on the, we call this the turntable. Now I'm going to switch to the view section down at the bottom. Now, if your sections at the bottom don't have labels, you need to right-click. I'm going to turn my section labels off. And see, you can just right-click and say Sections with Labels. That's easier to work with. So now I'm on the View section, and you'll notice this little icon here for Swap Term Table. Okay, I'm going to turn that off. Okay. Now when you expand a assembly or subassembly, it will just stay in place right here. Now if you turn this to Swap Turntable, now that subassembly that you expanded gets its own turntable. Now here's another assembly right here. This is a assembly of just 3 little parts, a bolt, a nut, and a washer. And if I select my little plus sign here at the very bottom, let's see if I can get that up a little bit. There we go. Hit the little plus sign. Now that subassembly is expanded onto a wheel and onto a turntable. Now each one of these is exactly the same subassembly as that, but this is kind of a nice way if you want to see what's inside a subassembly very easily. You can use these turntables on and off. I'm going to turn it off for now. So we go back to the big turntable all put together. And now I'm going to do a little demonstration of this here, this icon that says Ambience. And we're going to select the different ambiences here to give you an idea of some of the backgrounds. Let's go to Icy Blue. This is an Icy Blue ambience, okay? And then there's a Design Crystal Lab. Okay, there we go. A different kind of a backgrounds. And let's do a dark mirror. That's a totally different way of looking at your part with the background. These are all the pre-setups. And then you can, of course, choose no ambience at all. That's typically what I like to have, but some people prefer the Design Icy Blue. They seem to really like that with the grid lines. Okay. I'm going to turn it back to no advanced ambience. Okay. And now let's talk about this icon for Ghost, No Ghost. Let's say we would like to make one of these parts transparent. And if we touch on this part here, we see that that is actually, see what's highlighted? It highlighted a whole bunch of parts. When I touch on any one of these parts, that whole subassembly highlights the water pump assembly. Now if I expand that and then I touch on the part, just that single part highlights. Okay? So I'm going to actually touch on the entire subassembly, and I'm going to select my ghost icon. Okay, so we select our ghost icon and we select this subassembly. And we select the ghost icon. Come on, there we go. And select the subassembly, and there it is ghosted. Now you can ghost an entire subassembly, or you can ghost just a single part. If we expand the pump stack here, we could pick a individual part in the pump stack, this outer flange, and we could say we would like to ghost it. There we go. Now these ghostings sometimes do show up better with some of the other ambiences. There we go. That's a little bit nicer. Okay. Now you can see that there's a little bitty ghost there on the part, and then if you scroll up, you see that this entire subassembly has a little ghost on it, as well as each one of its parts. Okay. Here are some of the functions that we wanted you to be comfortable with for the quiz. So we've covered turntables, we've covered ghosting, you've seen the Explore subproducts. We're going to touch a little bit more on that, and you've seen the ambience. Okay, so now let's collapse the tree a little bit. Now we have all of these sub-assemblies here. Let's take this sub-assembly and let's right-click and say Explore for it. And it will open in its own app. See at the top here, its own tab. It's now in its own app, and you can expand it from there. So sometimes if you're working with really large assemblies which have a lot of really large sub-assemblies, it's nice to just open one of those assemblies in a little window by itself, and you can explore it a little bit easier that way. Okay? And that brings us to the end of this demonstration of the Explorer mode. Now, in addition to the product finder, there's many other apps that work in Explorer mode, and certainly we've only hit on a few of the icons here in this Explorer mode, in this app. But that's a great little introduction for you, and that's enough for you to get comfortable in finding your parts and opening them. Now, if you want to take this sub-assembly that we have here and open it into CATIA, you can right-click on it and say Open. And now that sub-assembly, which is part of the big master assembly, that is opening now into CATIA. And sometimes I refer to CATIA as real mode, because now we're actually in authoring mode. And we can edit parts and add new parts and things like that. Okay? That brings us to the end of this walkthrough of Explorer mode.